Welcome to another episode of Just My Baby Daddy podcast. It's your favorite baby daddy, AJ. And today we're going to do something a little different. I built this platform based upon fatherhood, and a lot of dads that are now dads, like myself, grew up without dads, but we had our mom there. And I thought at a time like this, we're just coming off a Mother's Day weekend, it would be a good time to speak about how my mother influenced how I parent. Because there's no other parenting influence, no other role model I can go off of besides the person that raised me. And the person that raised me, there was no male influence. There was no seeing how to grow up to be a man. The person that raised me was a woman. The person that raised me was my mom. The person that I got my ambition from, the person that I learned to hustle, the person that I learned that no matter what happens, these bills got to be paid, food's got to be on the table, things got to be done. That type of work ethic, for working multiple jobs, and making sure, hey, money's here, making sure that you don't have to necessarily want for anything. Not saying that definitely didn't grow up with, you know, an abundance of things, but I didn't need for anything. I never really was a type to need or ask for much. But just the example of making sure to provide, that was my mother. And it's so weird and it's so odd that, we always talk about the role of a dad as a provider, as, a disciplinarian, all these different things. But, as I've gotten older, I respect even more the role that my mother has played, because my mother was all of that. And that is something that I have given a lot more grace to and a lot more understanding to, not just with my mother, but just other moms, single moms that go through it. Because just being in the space that I am now, when I have my children with me, it's just me. There is no tag team, anybody else help when it's my time. Granted, it's completely different. I don't have any of my children 24/7, 365, no relief. That's not my reality. I never want that to be my reality. But I love to have my kids 365, of course. But there will always be a sense of relief, because there's always going to be another parent there. Because no matter what, the mothers of my children will always be mothers of my children, always be in my children's lives. There's never going to be a point, even if I were to take my children, that they just wouldn't be around. It's a different aspect when it comes to that. And I really want to give a special thanks to my mother, because when it comes to certain things, like little things as a man that I do, that my mother taught me just off of what she thought a man should do, and it ended up being the right thing. Like, I talk to my son now about, hey, when you talk to somebody, you look him directly in the eye. When you shake a man's hand, you look him in the eye, you give a firm handshake. Stuff like this, man. This is something that I learned from my mother. And I would feel like I would hate for my kids to have to try to learn that from their mother, instead of me being the person there from them, being the person there to teach them that. There's so many, I remember just little things, like when I first moved back, how my son would be peeing sitting down. And I had to tell him, like, yo, like, we don't do that. You pee standing up. I don't care if you get on your tippy toes and you miss the toilet. I don't care. You figure it out. You pee standing up. But yet now I think about it, like, I had nobody teach me that, make sure that I did that. I just had my mom. And she did the best that she could to try to mold me into a respectable young man. Now, was she effective in that? Yeah, in the end, I mean, I am who I am now. Those formative years, I was an asshole. I mean, I might not be the I'm still a little bit of an asshole now to some people, but back then it was rough. It was rough, and it's not just that. It's not just my mother, because I talk about the fatherhood village, and we talk about we hear about women and their girls trips and things like that. Well, for me, it wasn't even just my mom and her friend group. It's my aunts, and I tell them this all the time. Like, there's no me without them. And I pick up little things from all my aunts who all had boys. I had five aunts. All of them had boys. And a lot of them, the dad wasn't necessarily there. So I had to see how they tried to raise their boys. My cousins, who I call my cousin brothers because we all grew up like brothers, them raising them into respectable men and them doing it on their own. And it's a lot. And I when you hear that a woman can't raise a man, I'm not totally sure I'm into that or opposed. I don't, but I do think a woman can definitely help guide a man into the right direction in which he should go. And I'm a living testament of that. I'm a living testament of that because of my mother. I'm a living testament of that because of my aunts. And seeing I know I sat back and I at times where I worked multiple jobs in order to make sure I can provide for my family. And I thought about, how hard and I talked about how hard I worked to do this and stuff like that. And I remember sitting there and talking to my aunt about like, she said, "How you been?" And I was telling to her about the balance of things and it put in perspective what hard work is and making sure you do for your family. Cause she said, "Yeah, if you're working two jobs." I remember I did that, and I did that for years. And it made me think like I never heard a complaint. Of course, I'm a child, right? So I don't. If there are complaints, I'm not going to hear it, or they're not going to come to me. But I hear no complaints. I hear no about to get put out. Heard none of that from them. We got to do what we got to do to make sure this family thrives and make sure this family continues on. And that is something that you know I have lived by and try to pursue myself. Like I'm really big on making sure family connection is there, and a lot of that again has come from not just my aunts, but really from my mother. Because my mother, when we eventually moved into the house that we moved into when I got to high school, all the events would always be like it'd be Christmas at the house, especially when the grandparents moved in. It'd be like Christmas at the house or Thanksgiving at the house, or it's always been a very hospitable place, and that's something that I've taken in my parenthood style as well. So I've been hospitable where I'm like, hey, kids, if you want your friends, you let them come over. Your cousins, come to the house. I'd rather everybody come to my house in a more controlled environment, and we all have fun together there as a family. And that is something that was never, my mother ever said, hey, I want to make sure we get this family time. It was just something that she did. Now I've become more intentional with it because she always spent the time with her sisters. So they always made sure it was family time. But growing up in that type of atmosphere made me fall in love with my family even more. And it makes me want to build that type of atmosphere for my children. I say it all the time. I talk to my cousins all the time, like, hey, I understand we can't move the same way our mothers moved with us because a lot of them were moving that way. There was no other half. There is no mom and dad side of the family. Whereas now my kids have both sides of the family. So there's, time and place for each thing. But we still need to make sure there's a time where, hey, when it's dad's side of the family, you need to make sure it's dad's side for me, dad's side for you, dad's side for you. And we all make sure that these kids make sure that they have time, that they can have real family time together because as we continue to move on throughout life, we shouldn't just have to depend on our mothers to be the foundation to make sure to keep the family together. And that's something that's really big and that stuck with me is I don't know again if I was just raised with just my father or just men in general, if I would have that strong sense of family that I have now. And a lot of that, could be is definitely tied to the women in my family. And I'm forever grateful for them. Play loud music on Sunday mornings, Saturday mornings. I don't care if my kids want to hear it or not. Get that from my parenting style, from my aunts and my mother. If it's certain things I know that needs to be done, and I know for the fact that it's for the best of you, it's not time for conversation. You know why? because I know what's best. And I know down the road what's going to happen. And I learned that from who? My mother. I learned that from my aunts. Now my kids are learning that as an extension of my mother. It's always been, especially for me, and she hates it when I talk like that, but it never was a wonderful, loving, just embraced all the time. Oh, me and my mom, we were never that type. But through me having children, I can say I understand her more. I appreciate her more. And the love that I see that she has for her grandchildren, I can see that same love she had for me. She just couldn't display it at that time because, one, I'm much harder than my grandkids than her grandkids were. And two, it's a lot trying to do it all on your own. And so I'm grateful and I'm thankful because I would not be prepared to be able to handle this journey that I'm taking right now without my mother. And so even though it's Mother's Day has passed, I gotta say happy Mother's Day to my mother and thank you to my mother because if my kids enjoy me as a father and as a parent, they wouldn't be able to do that if it wasn't for my mother. So thank you.
Episode of Just My Baby Daddy podcast. I know you liked what you saw. So what I need for you to do is go back and look at past episodes. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share our YouTube page, Just My Baby Daddy Podcast. And you can follow us on all social media at Just My Baby Daddy Pod.